In today's video, I want to share some of my sewing highs and, well, sewing lows. So let's dive deep into 2019. So I guess it's a good idea to start with the highs, right? I think the biggest highs was that I somehow found the courage of taking a break from my day job to fully focus on my sewing business. And I began that hiatus in September, so now it's been 4 months, and wow, what the time has flown. I mean, it's kind of one of those things when you know in the back of your mind that time will go really fast and you will probably not be able to do half of the projects that you kind of imagine when you're fantasizing about this when trying to do all this on the side when working full time. But the reality is, yes, it's actually flown away. But overall, I would say so far it's been an absolutely fantastic experience from a mental perspective, because I feel now, which I also talked about in a previous video where I shared my decision to take this break from the day job, I've been really suffering with feeling really stretched too thin, and now being able to fully focus on the things that I find the most exciting in my life when it comes to sewing has been such a blessing, and I've been doing so many things. As you probably already know, I released my first garment sewing pattern. I have been able to start working on my next book, which is a book about sewing your own jeans. And I have lots of other projects as well, big and small, that I've been working on so far. I opened my own online shop, which is shop.thelaststitch.com. I'm also working now on a new accessories pattern that I hopefully will be out very soon. So there are lots of things going on. And that is absolutely like a fantastic luxury to be able to devote so much time to this. So that has definitely, I think, been the biggest highlight of 2019 for sure. Now it's about to end because there are only 2 months left, and I will go back to my day job because, which I talk about in a blog post I recently wrote when I reflected on my experience so far doing this, and which I already knew, surprise, surprise, but the financial realities of trying to make sewing a sustainable business is pretty grim, to be honest. There are not, I make the argument in the blog post as well, there are not a massive amount of people making good living from sewing and other like textile based crafts, and that is just a fact of life, because sewing is such a small niche in the big scheme of things, especially when we talk about garment sewing. And so it's really hard to you get enough audience, potential customers, momentum just by working with sewing related projects. So that's definitely the things that I kind of knew beforehand, but I'm not too depressed about that because I already knew that going into it. So overall, I'm just really happy that I've had this time to actually do all the fun things in life and not being so stressed out about all the other stuff. That said, it does come with a low as well doing this full time, and that is kind of like a sewing burnout. I've experienced this in the past as well, because many years ago I also used to sew clothes and sell them, and I know it's the same thing now that I've been developing patterns and doing lots of projects for my sewing books, is because I don't have a lot of time to devote into like regular garment that I wear. There are much more repetitive tasks. Like for instance, when I released my leggings sewing patterns, I did tons of test garments to perfect the shape of the leggings, and then I made a bunch of samples for the photo shoots. So in the end, I've been sewing so many leggings over and over again, and now I'm about to do the same thing when it comes to jeans. And that definitely is a side effect that I'm sure all of you has experienced. If you ever start doing, sewing the same thing over and over, regardless what it is, it kind of takes away a little bit of the fun thing about sewing, because I think for a lot of us, it's more like a creative outlet, and we're not working on an assembly line. So when we're sewing the same thing over and over again, it kind of takes out the fun of it. So when I find that I have struggling a little bit with balancing that, because I feel like, a lot of the plans that I had for my own wardrobe I've not been able to execute on because I've been sewing so many things that are related to producing things for my sewing business. So that is definitely a trade-off, and I have no answer to that really, and I'm sure that everyone who has been in a similar situation has felt similar emotion. But yeah, it kind of felt like a low end. To be honest, I'm not really seeing like a clear end to that now because, as I said, I'm going into now hardcore working on my jeans book, which means that there will be a lot more repetitive tasks moving forward. So I can't really say that I see any relief until maybe next spring. Yeah, that makes me a little bit sad, but it is what it is. It's hard to do all the things all the time. So when something has to give, and I will definitely make sure that I take a big break then to devote time to my own project, because I definitely need to get back to the fun and creative thing about sewing. But let's move on to another high, and that was definitely the sewing meetup that I had in New York with some fellow sewists. We met up at Metro Textile, Kyle, Carol and Rode, and we had an absolutely fantastic time. And if you're curious to know more about that, you should definitely check out the video that I did where I did a haul of all the stuff that I got there. It was absolutely wonderful. The sewing community, it's the most amazing place, and I tell you this guy to you guys all the time, but I just love how generous, positive, encouraging we have. It's such a wonderful space to have where we can share all the things and meet up and connect, and it's just a wonderful thing. And I was so glad that I was also able to meet people in person, which definitely just takes the whole community and interaction to another level. So that was definitely one of my funniest day in 2019. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in New York that day. It was absolutely wonderful. Another highlight of 2019 was definitely releasing my second book, Master the Coverstitch Machine. Now, I've been absolutely blown away by the reception of that book. So thank you so much for everyone who has gotten the book. It means so much to me, and it's super, super encouraging. And also, to be honest, I didn't have much expectations, and I never really do on my project, because it's probably a way of me mentally to like disappointment damage control, if you know what I mean. It's basically that I have a tendency to set my expectations really low, just to not end up in a space where I have to suffer through a lot of disappointment because I set my aims too high. So getting this fantastic response on my book, and the fact that the book has sold pretty well for being a sewing book, that it was also self-published, which is something I also really had to learn in order to make this happen, that absolutely blew my mind. So yeah, that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of in 2019, was the fact that I was able to create a sewing book that resonated with so many sewists around the world. So yeah, that was definitely an amazing experience. But putting yourself and your content out there also means opening myself up to a lot of vulnerability. I don't think anyone has like the mental strength of shielding themselves from the views of others. So every time I put up something, regardless if it's a pattern or sometimes even a video, and definitely my sewing books, I also struggle with quite the sorry, not deliberating, debilitating anxiety, which basically manifests in a way that I get like almost catastrophe thoughts once my thing is out in the world, and I feel really terrible for several days, and I feel like people won't like what I do. People will have very valid criticism towards the stuff that I have created, and I will just get like a big backlash, or no one would just like what I do. Because this year I both put out a book and my first garment sewing pattern. I've had 2 seasons of this emotional strains basically, and If you're curious to know more about my anxiety and stuff like that, you can also check out my video that I've done about sewing and mental health. But that definitely manifests itself big time when I do this type of big product launches. So it's hard because I definitely feel like I have to expose myself to this if I want to do the things that I want to do. But having to deal with it in the moment kind of makes me not want to do it. Luckily, that feeling definitely passes. I feel like I have a strong core. I have a sense of self-worth and a self-confidence. But even so, I find that the emotional stress of putting things out into the world and being reviewed and judged and all that stuff, that definitely takes a toll on my mental health. Not, as I said, it doesn't like break me down totally, but it definitely causes some stress in my life. So I thought about that if I need to slow down a little bit, but then again, I think if you do it more often, you probably get more like detached to the process and hopefully not as anxious. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that, but I keep struggling a bit with that. But I also have to think that this is just part of the process, and I'm sure everyone goes through it, but perhaps not everyone likes to talk about it because it can feel a little bit, I don't know, embarrassing, not the word, but you kind of want to project this strong entrepreneurial person who's very confident in what they're doing. But I think the reality is that a lot of people being very creative and putting things out of the world also suffers a lot from anxiety. That's how I think the case is. So that's why I want to talk about it as well, so you won't just think that it's all roses. So this was my 2019. Now I'm really curious about what was your sewing year like. Did you have some highs? Did you have some lows? Please tell and share your story in the comment section, because we all go through those emotions. Some days it's up, some days it's down. Sometimes we really doubt our abilities when it comes to sewing, and other times we feel like we're a superpower and we can do everything. So yeah, there are lots of emotional things attached to sewing for sure. So I'm really curious to hear what your experience has been during 2019. Anyways, if you like my videos, please subscribe for weekly sewing videos. You can also check out my blog, thelaststitch.com, where I talk lots more about what's been happening during this year. And until next time, stitch safe. Bye bye.